Chapter 2. Raising the Bar. Zale seethed within as he ascended a narrow cobblestone alley of Warvonia. He'd gotten very little sleep after last night's encounter with Vidimir. As he tossed and turned into the morning hours, he could not stop thinking about the Mastery Bar. Dippy trailed in his wake.
"Do you really think they raised the bar, Captain?"
Zale had eyes only for the road ahead. "I hope not, but I have a sneaking suspicion that something's amiss." He moved as fast as his legs would carry him, which was not terribly fast, more of a swift hobble. Low groans escaped with his breaths, as much from angst as breathlessness. If there was current mischief concerning the Mastery Bar, he intended to get to the bottom of it. The alley opened up into a vast plaza surrounded by gallant columned structures of local governance. The largest of these was the residence of Warvonia's Lord Mayor. Zale flashed at a glare and turned toward a much smaller but no less extravagant building of dark green marble and gilded trim. Most of the seafarers in this town tended to keep a low profile in society, but the guilders who controlled them flaunted their power with nauseating arrogance. In particular, within this building was the office of Dugard Pratt, chief mercantile gilder of the Rockney province. Zale brushed sweat from his brow as he approached, exasperated over Vidimir's claim that the bar had been raised. If true, it marked a move by the guild as extraordinary as it was underhanded. Zale's hand slid across a thick railing of burnished gold as he ascended the stairs. Not bothering to knock, he pounded through the door, stomping into a reception room of antique green wood paneling. Two clerical ladies jumped from their desks with yelps of surprise.
"Master Murdoch,"
one of them sputtered.
"To what do we owe—"
"Dugard," Zale rumbled. "Is he in his office?"
"Chief Pratt is currently with someone. We can request an appointment."
Zale trudged forward. He didn't have time for this nonsense.
"Oh, Master Murdoch, please wait."
He left Dippy in the foyer and pushed through a set of tall doors into an opulent office furnished with large, cushy chairs, shelves of record books, and console tables littered with local maps. This was the spendthrift office of Dugard Pratt. Two familiar men stared back at Zale with round eyes. One was Pratt himself, a square-faced man with spiked hair and a thick beard of bright red and white, almost like snow on fire. Garrick Seadread Rummy sat across from Pratt's desk, a pock-marked, dour sight of a man with a lazy eye. Somehow the man's beard had managed to turn white with age, whilst the hair of his head remained perfectly black.
"Murdoch!" Dugard exclaimed in a big voice. "What in hell's fury are you doing?"
Zale weighed his response. Seadread's presence had taken him aback. He wasn't sure he wanted to have this conversation in front of his longtime rival. "Captain Rummy," Zale nodded. "Have the winds fared you well?" Seadread got up from the chair, standing nearly a full head taller than Zale. His lazy eye twitched in focus, and his mouth worked a long wooden churchwarden pipe. "I need a word, Dugard," said Zale. "It's urgent."
"We're in the middle of something here. It'll have to wait."
Zale opened his mouth to protest, but the crackly voice of Seadread spoke instead.
"No need to wait."
He turned toward Dugard.
"Most, like our purposes here, align."
"The Mastery Bar," Zale said cautiously.
"Ah, you see," Seadread said.
"Is it true, then, Dugard? Has it been raised?" Pratt rubbed at the bridge of his nose with a long sigh.
It's true."
"This is an outrage!" Zale shouted.
"Aye," Seadread hissed. "How fancies ye a nice, friendly mutiny to get the point across?"
"Can it, Rummy?" Dugard snapped. "Your crew might be the most ruthless to sail the seas, but your campaign would be short-lived against the Royal Guard."
Seadread answered with a derisive snort. Zale spread his arms.
"How can you do this? And now, so close to the deadline?"
"Me?"
Dugard gave a disparaging chuckle and took a seat behind his desk.
I'm on your side here, gentlemen. I can't remember a time when two crews were so close to the goal. This order came from Fort Morga, from the capital baron himself, on authority from Metsata Palace. It seems for now that the Crown wants the two of you to remain in full service.
And what business does Lycus Jar have with the Seafaring Guild? Seadred asked.
Baron Char takes a keen interest in all the guilds throughout Sharm and Rockney, not to mention an ever-tightening reign, Dugard replied.
Zale knew he spoke truth here, dissatisfying as it was. The Baron's seat in Fort Morga was known in the kingdom as the Capital Baron. He was the only Baron to preside over two provinces, Sharm and Rockney, which also happened to be the two most populous provinces in the kingdom. Sharm contained the kingdom's capital city of Miskun on the southeastern coast.
"This does not sit well with me at all," Zale grumbled. "It's completely against the code."
"An ancient code," Dugard fired back. "You're lucky they haven't abolished it completely, allowing entire crews to forego quotas for reaching an arbitrary goal, all while taking a greater pay? It's a concept steeped in antiquity."
"Abolishing it might be their goal, methinks," said Seadred.
"No other guild has any such thing," Dugard continued. "The kingdom might not pander to your lot quite as in days of old, but it seems the Crown still has a soft spot. Despite mounting pressure, not the least of which is the constant possibility of starting war with other nations, they still want you scalawags to remain in service. At least for now, you're still considered relevant. Come now, gentlemen. You should be flattered, not dismayed."
"How can we be assured the goal won't change again?" asked Zale.
Dugard shrugged. "You can't. But this is an unprecedented move, and I suspect the officials know when they're overplaying their hand."
"What has the bar been raised to?" Zale asked.
"It is now over 10 million lira," Dugard said.
Zale felt faint. More than 1 million lira higher than before. In one fell swoop, he felt his hopes of respite slipping away. He had but wanted time to settle, to take only the jobs that most interested him, to spend his later years quietly with his family and granddaughters.
"And this be not overplaying their hand?" Seadred asked.
"You're still both within reach," Dugard said. "Squeeze in the right 1 or 2 jobs, and you'll make it. Well, one of you, anyway. Now get the blazes out of my office, both of you."
Back in the foyer, Dippy eagerly hopped to Zale's side. He nearly tripped over a desk at the sight of Seadred.
"So,"
said Seadred as they descended the steps outside,
"do you fathom what job you might pursue, Murdoch?"
Zale turned to face him. "Not as such." Seadred took calm steps toward Zale, stopping right in front of him.
"Best pick a mighty coffer, Zale. 'Tis a high bar to surpass."
"I'm still awaiting the strike of serendipity, as it were. And you, sir, have you picked up an apt assignment as of yet?"
Seadred's lazy eye seemed to shiver.
"Might be that I have."
He added a low grunt, his breath like old cabbage.
"May the best crew win, Captain," Zale said.
Seadred gave a dreadful yellow-toothed smile.
"Aye, just so, Zale. Best hope your serendipity strikes fast. The seas of hesitation are filled with the carcasses of those who, at the brink of decision, waited and died."
He clapped Zale on the shoulder as he made to leave.
"Fair winds to you, Murdoch. You never know which way they'll blow."
Murdoch threw open the door to the rickety sheet-metal meeting room where his crew officers had been assembled. Dippy had arranged everything, from securing the wharfside locale to rounding up the officers. Shards of loosely mounted flocalcite minerals provided dim lighting from 2 of the room's opposite-facing walls.
"Look alive, men!"
Zale shuffled his way toward a chair at the end of a long table that looked like a tall, smooth door sanded down and rolled over with brown paint. He took stock of the other old salts seated around the table. It was time to make some decisions about their next job. He also needed to rally his crew around the challenge of the Mastery Bar situation, assuming they didn't first incite a riot. Dippy, second only to Zale in seniority, puffed out his chest and tipped his sea-worn black tricorn hat.
"All the ship's finest assembled, Captain."
"And then some, I see," Zale replied. "What's Wigglebelly doing here?" Rapid chuckling responded from the other end of the room, from a gut that shook the table because it simply had nowhere else to go. The flushed, round face of Jackson Wigglebelly Harper jolted back and forth, beady eyes glancing over his shipmates. The ring of wispy white gold hair encircling his head made him appear electrocuted.
Come on, guys.
Wigglebelly pulled on his yellow suspenders. His zappy voice had the remarkable quality of sounding both light and thick all at once.
I'm the senior-most deckhand. You just want to know what we're muting about,
said Casper Beep Gibbers. Beep stroked the long black and yellow hairs of his chin, a beard so thick he was rumored to keep daggers stowed within. He was the ship's boatswain, and the appointed deck foreman over matters such as navigation, rigging, sails, ropes, and hull.
I'm an able-bodied seaman, man, Wigglebelly said. A deckhand is not an officer.
Wigglebelly's smile disappeared.
I help all you guys out there. I can cook. I fix stuff, man.
You're fat, Wigglebelly, Zale shot back. And you can stay. Your jollity pleases me. Wigglebelly chuckled with glee, shifting the table a good 3 inches. Brash as it may have sounded, Zale's comment was chummy, making light of his own largeness. Zale decided to start with matters of simple procedure. Is the Queenie readied and provisioned for voyage?
So we're not renaming the ship, then?
Beep asked.
It's named for the captain's cat, said Dippy.
And, forgive me, sir, that cat's dead, right? Mightn't that be bad luck?
Zale felt a pang of sadness. Queenie had died during their last voyage, not 2 weeks ago, leaving Lola to the burial. Queenie had lived as posh and happy a life as any cat could hope for. That cat's better luck dead than half you slack-arsed lickspittles are alive, Zale shouted. Now back on topic. Is the Queenie stocked and ready?
Aye, aye, Captain.
Yancey Thump Willigan saluted. Thump was the quartermaster, charged with the ship's stores of rations and supplies. A blue knit cap concealed his ginger hair, although his well-trimmed beard displayed it handsomely, and sunlight was the bane of his pale skin.
Plenty of timber, nails, and sailcloth are all on board, Thump said, and victuals aplenty for a standard voyage. Barrels of drink get loaded up in the morning, along with fresh wheels of cheese after Wigglebelly used up our whole supply.
Jackson shifted his girth toward Thump.
You know what cheese soup calls for, man? Cheese!
Yeah, and usually something else. Elsewise, it's just melted cheese. Gummed up my plumbing for days.
Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Zale slapped the table. Stay on target, men. Jim, how's our armory stash? Are the crossbows and ballista all trimmed out? Well, I haven't shot anyone for a real test since back in port, Rosh Chim Chum Pureblood said, sounding mildly dissatisfied. Chim Chum was nicknamed after an especially aggressive monkey they had encountered several voyages back. Rosh was Zale's one-armed master of arms, responsible for all weaponry aboard the Queenie. He had an oddly shaped, generally square head that flummoxed hatmakers, glasses upon his nose, and receding sandy-brown hair. But the siege skein is well torqued, Chim said, and the crossbow strings cleaned and oiled. We still have plenty of bolts, spears, and swords aboard from our last load. How about our crew openings, Dip? Zale asked.
We still lack a physicker, Captain, and a chaplain, if we're concerned with tradition, Dippy replied. Not essential needs, of course, so long as we have no sick or injured bodies.
Or injured souls, Thump added.
If our souls were perfect, would we be in this guild?
said Beep to a rumble of laughter. Zale glared at the table. Whatever job they took, timeliness was more important than ever. Zale mentally assessed anything they could do now that might help. Beep, Thump, let's have the berthing deck amidships cleared of all goods and chattels and stow all extra supplies in the hold.
Aye, sir, that's no problem, Beep said. Is this to clear the benches?
Yes, Beep, and please ensure the sweeps are in ready position. Are we rowing our next voyage? Thump asked. Expediency's the word, Zale said. If the wind betrays us, we must be ready to man the oars. That way we'll limit any becalming or tiding over as much as we can manage. We're a pretty light crew if we think much rowing will be involved, Chim said. And we've not had a proper coxswain since losing Axel to the pilfer. He'll get his reward for that treachery, Zale muttered. Sailing a few months under that sot of a captain ought to do it. Sir, Dippy said, I might have a notion for some additional crewmates, with your permission. Rowing or not, a few more hands on deck would not harm us. I'm inclined to agree, Zale replied. Make it so.
We could use a navigator for night watch, said Beep.
Zale rubbed at his scratchy chin. Take Jensen for that. Beep's mouth fell open.
Jensen, sir? He's a little green, barely out of his vocational studies, and more a carpenter at that.
Gives the lad a good chance to prove his worth, Zale said. Nothing like cutting a man's sleep to find out what he's really made of.
Yes, sir,
Beep said. Zale leaned back. Very good, crew. With that business out of the way, I have some news of a potentially less than savory nature. The room fell into the silence of anticipation. Zale's gruff sigh carried loudly. Gentlemen, the mastery bar has been raised. Chairs slid and fists pounded the table.
Can they do that?
Asked Chim, his face suddenly grave.
That's not supposed to happen before the deadline,
exclaimed Beep.
That's harsh, man, said Wigglebelly. That's real harsh. Hey, who can we pay off? There's always someone to pay off, man. You pay off the bar, Addlebrain, Beep replied.
Wigglebelly erupted, looking to his comrades for support. Finding none, Zale rubbed the bridge of his nose, giving the initial shock time to settle. The one person who was still sitting quietly was Yancey. What say you, Thump? Thump gave a light shrug. How high have they raised it? Over 1 million, he said. The room again broke into a furious racket. It seems, Zale said once he could hear his own voice, that the powers that be don't much relish the idea of granting their top crews quota flexibility and other such perks. Pratt says we should be flattered that we're still relevant.
If they like us so much, said Chim, maybe that could be to our advantage. Every crew in this guild knows enough about certain sanctioned cargo runs to stir hostilities abroad. I'm sure our good leaders would hate to have to answer for some of the jobs they've ordered.
Aye, that's fair enough, Dippy said. Still, I think we'd be wise to avoid a bout with the officials. Zale liked Chim's thought process. True enough, many jobs over the years had been ordered by kingdom officials that involved less than friendly negotiations with other lands, if not outright theft. He agreed with Dippy, however, that tussling directly with kingdom officials would not bode well for them. An opportunity has presented itself, Zale said. Dippy and I met a man at the Wench's Tavern, claiming to be within the inner circle of Brum nobility. Chim gave a low whistle.
That's no easy journey. At least one mountain pass, if not two, depending on which way you go.
Oh, man! Wigglebelly shifted his girth and rubbed his hands together. He must want something really expensive.
He seeks an artifact known as the Grimstone, Zale said. Allegedly, some piece of the celestial object that fell to Eleorin long ago and brought about the Shadow Age.
The Shadow Age? Beep asked. Is this guy for real?
I was there, Dippy said. This guy was real. Set the bloody table on fire with his hands.
Not just fire, Zale added. It flickered purple, and instead of heat came a completely unnatural chill. Sounds like a magician, said Chim.
Maybe some kind of illusion, said Beep.
The man knew of the raised bar, Zale said. In fact, he's the one who told us about it. He promised that the pay from this job would more than cover the new goal. The room fell into a contemplative stillness.
It seems a little too convenient, Fump finally said. Too good to be true. There were a few nods of assent around the table.
I agree, said Chim. It's your call, Captain. But to speak of the Shadow Age, and a parlor trick that was probably some kind of phlegmathist, and then he just happens to offer what we'll need to pass the goal, I can't help feeling a bit skeptical.
That wasn't phlegmathist, Dippy muttered.
There's another interesting development, Zale said. This gentleman also managed to approach old Puffy Pants.
Sea Dread, Dippy added under his breath. Maybe he's trying to play the field, said Fump. Stir us to action by mentioning our biggest rival. I got the distinct impression that he came to Arvonia seeking the best, Zale said. And he found them. Seadred and us.
If Seadred goes for it, Chim said, he could beat us to the goal with this one job.
Or, Beep said, the guy's throwing both of us on a bootless errand. Think about it. They've raised the bar. The officials clearly don't want us to earn quota exemption. Instead of just blatantly doing away with the goal, they just sidetrack us with a bogus job, make us flap our rudder aimlessly until the deadline passes, and then they raise the bar even higher, perhaps this time so high that no one could reach it.
And if it's not a misdirection, Dippy asked, even aside from the goal, it could bring us more boodle than we've ever hauled in a single charge.
Everyone know, Zale said, that I don't consider this mission lightly. Aside from the uncertainty, it could be dangerous. It might even tangle us up with Gukhan.
Aye, Captain, said Dippy, but such a large bounty should be expected to carry some risk.
I think you're all forgetting something, said Beep. This is supposedly an object of the Shadow Age, and the Shadow Age is just a fable.
How can you be so sure? Chim asked.
Because I outgrew the children's stories about Grimkins and Umbramancies.
Wigglebelly's smile disappeared.
Some say that stuff's true, man.
Beep groaned.
Why is Jackson here again?
It's a risky proposition.
Zale projected his voice before the conversation veered further off track.
Do we have any other prospects?
Well, it could be a long shot, Fump said, but we might have first dibs to bring in a shipment of Verdantium from Korengar. Tourism trade loves the stuff.
Hey, that's promising,
Chim said. Just one shipment of green moonstone isn't going to get us over 1,000,000 lira, Dippy said.
No, but it's such a short voyage. We should have enough time to pick up something else, Chim said.
Fump nodded. Which brings me to job number 2. Zale stared at Fump, impressed, finally feeling a glimmer of hope that they might have a real opportunity to sink their teeth into. It's a chancier run to Acadia, Fump said. The university down in Miskun's after a cosmic mineral called heptalatosite for research, and they'll pay big for it. Apparently, the Grimkins haven't been willing to negotiate fairly and need some motivation. It'd be a small shipment. Even against the winds, we might get back faster than usual. Zale rubbed feverishly at his stubbly beard.
This
does seem promising, Fump. The Karangarian capital of Vartu was only about a week's sail north of Warvonia, where they could retrieve the shipment and hurry back. Acadia was a bit farther across open waters to the east, but still doable. The feather-covered, beak-mouthed Grimkins could be a sketchy bunch, but Zale's crew had dealt with their kind a few times over the years. These jobs brought a certain comfort to Zale, a familiarity. He could imagine the cargo. He could trace their course in his mind's eye. Their outcome seemed inevitable. He saw none of that with the Grimstone job.
What if the Grimkins don't cooperate?
Beep asked.
Those lightweight, flightless wonders are of little concern, Dippy said. Chances are they'd think twice before getting the Tuscanese officials too upset, Fump said. If not, we'll intervene. Make those Grimkins squawk like egg-laying hens until a favorable arrangement is struck.
The Grimkins can be a stubborn lot, said Beep.
Aye, Zale agreed. There'll be no time for shenanigans.
Sounds perfect to me,
Chim said.
Let's see Dread trace the wind while we hurtle past the goal with real loads. Well, that settles it then, right?
Beep asked.
Dippy looked at Zale. What do you say, Cap?
Zale placed both hands upon the table with an air of finality.
To you, Fump Willigan, I say, stow an extra ration of ale for yourself and draw up the papers. We've got ourselves 2 jobs to the goal, men.